with the world leader who was doing a massive talk on all the treatments that exist for cerebral palsy. And she was just going from one thing to another. And there was one treatment I remember particularly she was really excited about. And at the time, I was reading 5 to 10 papers a week. I'd started studying neuroscience. Like, I was doing everything I could possibly do. I knew, and I had never heard of what she was talking about. And it's a free treatment. Like, it's actually one of my literal motivations for starting Turn2, because it's a free treatment that is one of the most exciting things happening in cerebral palsy, and no one knows about it. And how many years will it take for people to hear about something they can be doing right now? Because it's like a training method, and it's just this amazing way to unlock motor learning. Yes, I did raise my hand in the conference, and I did say to her, I shouldn't have to fly. This should be on my phone. Like, all the things she's sharing about, nobody knows about, and it's just not right. And it's like people will miss all this opportunity of things they can be doing.
So imagine with me for a moment that you have to travel halfway across the globe just to learn about a treatment that would benefit your child. And get this, it's buried in a research paper, and you would probably never know about this treatment for many, many years. Endless research, countless unanswered questions, and the frustration of feeling like you're the only one fighting for a solution. How do you keep going when the healthcare system is falling short? Hey, Tim here, and thanks for tuning into another episode of the Invisible Condition podcast, where we talk about advocacy and unusually normal things, the conditions, diseases, and illnesses we live with. We will end the stigma of invisible disabilities by empowering voices, and today's voice is brought to us by Jess Dove London. Jess is the founder of this really amazing health tech company called Turnto.ai, a company with a powerful and straightforward mission to speed up breakthroughs for every single person, building the home for all voices and insights for every health condition. Jess's journey began when her family was told there was really no more treatment options to help her son, who is living with a rare type of cerebral palsy. Determined to find answers, Jess traveled across the globe, attended conferences, read dozens and dozens and dozens of research papers to seek out the answers, the information that could improve her son's life. And for her son's condition, CP, Turn2 has already discovered more treatments than anywhere else, including a handful that have truly changed his life. This platform is now expanding its reach into including conditions like long COVID, ME/CFS, Parkinson's, and more. Now, in this episode, Jess shares her experiences and the importance of community and support, the power of curiosity and advocacy in managing invisible disabilities. She talks about how vulnerability is a strength and how technology is changing the way we approach healthcare. Have a listen. Well, Jess, I am excited to get into this conversation today. And for those who are listening or maybe watching, Turn2 is on my website. They are a proud supporter of Invisible Condition. And so I'm just excited to have Jess, the founder of this amazing health technology startup, here on the show, who's just going to talk to us about, just the foundation of her journey. A mom raising children with disabilities and the problem she's solving. And just the goal is, listeners, I know you're going to be not just inspired, but left with some actionable takeaways from this. So Jess, thanks for joining today.
Really nice to be here, Tim.
When we first connected, like I do with all my guests, we have a pre-call. Like, you said something that really stood out to me. And it was, I shouldn't have to fly across the world to learn about treatments for my son. Talk to us about that. We're going to jump right into this.
Into him.
I think it's a great place to start, because when you said that in our pre-call, I was thinking, you're absolutely right. But there's treatments for a lot of conditions that we just don't even know about. So talk to us a little bit about that, what was going on.
So my son had been diagnosed with a rare type of cerebral palsy, and I'd gone on this quest for many years to just find different options and the treatments that would help him. He is a super amazing kid, like as he is. I always feel like I want to say that, because I think sometimes these health labels can dehumanize people. He's just spunky, full of life. He's actually a real daredevil. But like he wants to do lots of things. So we're like, how can we help unlock his body with him? And I'd ended up at this conference. It was a leading conference for cerebral palsy. It was the first time they'd ever let anyone with lived experience attend. There were like thousands of scientists. I felt really like an imposter. Like I truly did. And I'm a pretty confident person. I think I did lose a lot of my confidence maybe in the earlier years. But I did feel this, like I was sitting in sessions and I remember even they were talking about parents and I was sitting there just like going, like, I'm here, I'm in the room. Like, but at the time, like I read a lot of papers. So I was like pretty well informed and in a session with the world leader who was doing a massive talk on all the treatments that exist for cerebral palsy. And she was just going from one thing to another. And there was one treatment I remember particularly she was really excited about. And at the time I was reading 5 to 10 papers a week. I'd started studying neuroscience. Like I was doing everything I could possibly do. I knew, and I had never heard of what she was talking about. And it's a free treatment. Like it's actually one of my literal motivations for starting Turn2 because it's a free treatment that is one of the most exciting things happening in cerebral palsy and no one knows about it. And like it, how many years will it take for people to hear about something they can be doing right now? Because it's like a training method, and it's just this amazing way to unlock motor learning. Yes, I did raise my hand in the conference, and I did say to her, like, I shouldn't have to fly. This should be on my phone. Like all the things she's sharing about, nobody knows about, and it's just not right. And it's like people will miss all this opportunity of things they can be doing, unless they want to fly around the world too.
So you got a good flight, but that wasn't your intention. Just to, hey, we're just going to hop on a flight and learn all this great information and fly back home to then be able to maybe bring up with your doctor or talk with your care team or implement with your son. And
yeah. And that story is really interesting because that particular treatment she mentioned, I then had to go on a hunt. So like all the world leaders are sitting around talking about this thing and I couldn't find anyone to do it. I ended up like finding a therapist who knew an academic therapist in another city. I like somehow got on his wait list. I got him to train somebody else. And it's literally one of the most effective things we've ever done. And you could learn it in 20 minutes. Like you could learn it. Anyone could learn it. So it was just like ridiculous.
So I can imagine there's people listening to this and just being frustrated on your behalf. And there's yourself who was, I can imagine just going, okay, what do I do now? And so why did you choose to say, okay, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to advocate for my son. I'm going to, then turn it into a business. But there's a moment of that self-advocacy or care as a caregiver where you have to say, okay, this is what it is, or we're going to continue to fight on.
Yeah. I think, there's often like different moments in our life that we have to become advocates. Like I think, being an advocate, for some people it comes more naturally than others. And even to those, like probably for me at the beginning with my kids, it wasn't as natural because we had a lot of medical trauma. And I just was pretty beaten by that. But then I learned the hard way to like, doesn't matter. You just speak up and you just make mistakes. Like, but you just, and there was some I had some very significant experiences of medical gaslighting where I just learned I'll never do that again. I'll never not speak up. But I do think it's an invitation, and I think it's possibly when it is your child, like it is an easier invitation sometimes than yourself. I did have ME/CFS in 2000. I always forget, 13 years ago. It's all a blur after having my kids. So it was much harder to advocate for myself, actually, I think, because I had a lot more doubt. I just and at that time, there was, and there still is, so little understanding or support. It's very haphazard where you're going to get support. So, yeah, I think it is a different I don't feel like I have anything profound other than I think it's an invitation, and it was easier for me to do for my kids than for myself.
Someone who is part of your team or is supports one of the conditions, part of the app, Julie she wrote an written interview, and I'm going to mess up her quote, so I'll have to put a link in the show notes. But she said something in there about why would I not accept the quality of care that I would advocate for my child. And so, I think as a caregiver, as a parent, and wanting the best for that person or that I'm caring for. And, she kind of worked it into herself of, no, I need to fight for this. I need to ask questions. But you said something there that caught my attention, which was you made a lot of mistakes. And I feel like when I'm advocating for myself, I'm afraid to make a mistake or ask the wrong thing in front of my doctor. How did you overcome that? Because I'm sure it's not just me that is feeling like, oh no, I need to know all the answers.
I think it's like one of my biggest passions. And I even again, have to remind myself of that when I'm coming into an intimidating appointment or have an awkward moment with a medical professional or a frustrating moment. I did have a pretty significant experience once with my son when he was sent home after a surgery, and he just wasn't right. And I knew he wasn't right. And my husband went into ED and they didn't admit him. They sent him home. We're just anxious parents. And he'd been a medical kid. So you generally shouldn't send away parents whose kids have been in ICU for a long time. They're not going to come in easily. But then the next day, I was still anxious. I'm he doesn't look right. So we went to a local doctor, and the doctor said, he's fine. You're just being anxious. And, so then I'm not making this up. The next day I went to another doctor in another place. I drove somewhere else. I'm okay, we'll go to this other place 40 minutes away. Same thing. The doctor sent me away. And anyway, that night I didn't sleep the entire night. I was watching him and I just was is it me? Am I wrong? He didn't look right. I just knew something was wrong. And I found out there was a medical clinic that staffed senior doctors. And I walked in, and within 15 minutes, they called an ambulance. And he actually went into shock an hour later. He would have passed away if he'd been at home. And that moment was just this smack in the face. Who cares if I was wrong? Who cares if I'd gone to that fourth doctor and he was fine? What does it matter? I'm a bit embarrassed. I've wasted some time. And obviously that's a very dramatic story, and it's a real story. And it's crazy because I had to go through 4 doctors to be listened to. We weren't even being listened to in ED. But this was a senior doctor. He could see the signs that his adrenal gland wasn't working. So I guess that experience was just really liberating, and who cares if I'm wrong? Who cares if I waste time? But obviously, it is quite an extreme experience. But you read these stories all the time when people aren't listened to, and it's really hard as well because I don't want to feed fear that people have, because you can have this fear. But again, at the same time, I kind of think if you've had a few things really go wrong, maybe it's not fear. You're just using data points. I think we're made to feel sometimes by health professionals that we're overly anxious. But if you've been unwell and you have significant pain, you've got a really serious health problem. It's a real thing you're facing, even if they can't explain it.
Yeah, I resonate with your story. Someone recently, I won't go to the details, but had a very similar story as a parent with their child. And the parent said, well, what test can we run to just rule anything out? And the doctor threw out a test and he said, okay, let's do that one. And the doctor was a little shocked. To sum up the story real quick, from going to the hospital, being told it was nothing, to 4 days later having massive life-altering surgery for a child. I feel like we are our best advocates. We know what's going on in our bodies. We know when we're feeling off. And I love what you said. It's a data point. It is. It's a data point. It's going, I said to my wife a few weeks ago, something just doesn't feel quite right. I'm just going to wait it out. see what it feels, and it went away. It might have just been a little virus or a cold or something, but it's like, okay, something is not quote unquote my normal. And being able to ask your doctor, being able to seek that fourth opinion. It just, don't stop advocating for yourself. And this all then turned into a health startup. Talk to us about the company you're building. I'm fascinated by it. I don't have CP, and I know multiple sclerosis is on there and long COVID, but I'm just fascinated with the app and what you're building and how it's helping people. So talk to us about it.
Yeah, so the app kind of really came about more from the experience of just trying to find more treatment and health breakthrough information. So from that journey with my son, I think it's this also knowing that when you have a complex health condition, there are just so many places that you can find a puzzle piece. So really, when I was sitting in that conference and they're sharing all of these things and I'm having to fly around the world to learn about it, that is a problem. Like, that's just a problem that needs to be solved. And particularly they were talking all about this early intervention work that existed when my son was that age that I didn't know about. Like, that is just gut-wrenching. You're like, I was asking everybody and nobody was giving me that knowledge. So really the problem we want to solve after leaving that conference that I went away with was that health breakthrough information lives everywhere. So it lives in papers, it lives in these conferences, and it lives with the community. Like, the community are sometimes ahead, depending what it is. Leading clinicians are sometimes ahead as well. So, for what does that mean in my life? It's like, I can't even know what's all that's out there. I can't stay on top of what's coming out. And so then I'm missing out on things that maybe improve my quality of life today. So that's the problem. Like, often in a startup, you have a problem. Ours is just a small problem, Tim.
Just tiny, right?
Just small. Every it relates to every health condition. So after that time, I went away. I have built things before in the not-for-profit space, and I think it's a real privilege to be able to reimagine the world and get people together and try build a different story. So started a startup. We built an early product where we kind of found every treatment that exists for cerebral palsy just to test the idea. And we found hundreds of treatments. And the reason that's so interesting, and it relates to every condition, is probably 99% of them had research behind them. So they're separate teams of people working on all these different treatments, and consumers and patients know of about 5 to 10. So it's just wild that there's all these amazing people working all of these things, but you don't know if you're not lucky enough to live near that or have that doctor, or maybe there's not enough evidence, but it's still interesting. So built this sort of early idea, and then early last year we brought a team together to really solve this. Building a tech product. So, putting a mobile app together and launching cerebral palsy initially with, how do we stay on top? So our product is like a daily product, but you can use it weekly, and it provides all the perspectives on all different treatments and medical health breakthroughs and any sort of health breakthrough information. So that's sort of what led us to it. And it's pretty early days. Like, we just launched long COVID and ME/CVS. We're launching Parkinson's in a few weeks. Then we're launching MS. Then we're launching spinal cord injury. And it's all just the beginning. Like, for us, it's, giving people that information, but really it's also next step of how do you go deep as well on what's relevant for you?
I was interviewing somebody recently about just all the information that they're finding for their condition and trying to figure out what to even bring to their doctor as a potential treatment and potential diagnosis and all this stuff. And so if someone goes to your app, and whether they have one of the listed conditions or not, I'm curious, what will they find, and how do you put it all together to all that information together? Because I can imagine it's a lot.
It's a lot. I think depending where you are on the journey as well really matters. If you're earlier on, if you don't have a diagnosis, that's like a really challenging time as well. Like it's like trying to get those puzzle pieces. At the moment, we are going launching into people with more sort of, even if you're not diagnosed, you do know you've got a particular condition in our current sort of format. The way we put it together is just giving people like a snapshot every day. So it's almost like a TikTok experience where you get 5 to 10 posts that are for you every single day. So, because it is really hard to stay on top. And I think, rather than doing hours and hours of research, it's a way to just get information every day because there's new things published every single day for health conditions. And it's like giving you a snapshot. And then in the app, the ability to go deeper through search and community. And that's just right now. We are launching a few more sort of more aggregate experiences, so you can sort of get more of a bird's eye view of like what are the 10 most exciting things coming around the corner, or what is relevant for me personally. But yeah, being overwhelmed is a real challenge. I think it is something we hope to support as well. But at the moment, what people get most is they're just learning new things. So, a little bit like me going to that conference, sharing those sort of things, sharing what exists even just in the ecosystem, particularly when there's not a clear silver, a magic pill that makes you better. Like, we all want that, of course. Like, that is the hope, that there is a really easy treatment solution that works for all. But often when you're living in the sort of the mess of it, you're just looking for your next piece and seeing if it relates to you and can you access it, and is this your biggest pain point? Or
I love that. I'm excited to see it being built out for more conditions. If is there a place to vote on which condition is next, and but I think you highlighted a couple things that really stood out to me. One is community, and in your personal journey, how has community played a role?
It's interesting. Like, I think when I was unwell, like 13 years ago myself, we didn't have like the active Facebook groups or anything like that back then. So I had no online community. I only had like the few people I met, and you'd meet them and you'd like grab hold of them and be like, tell me everything. Like, what's been your story? I mean, it could be like, to this day, our family, like my partner and I's best friend is someone who was unwell when we were unwell. I was unwell. But in my son's journey, like the online community has been pretty incredible. I think people are sharing whatever they're learning. They're incredibly supportive. Like, I think patients just give and give and give. And because you have to fight for some of these insights with blood, sweat, and tears, you don't want, you just intrinsically want to help someone else on that journey. Like, it is an incredible experience. If you see, I remember putting a post up on a specific question for my son once, and I was just so lost. And that's like this one person in the UK just went and took photos of everything they'd tried for this one particular thing. And we just went and did it the next day. And I thought, wow, like, how incredible was that mum, that she went to all that effort. And that's kind of what turned to one of the things we do in the app. We actually do capture some of these lessons you've learnt because we want others to easily be able to find that. So it doesn't have to be like the same people answering the same questions over and over again. But yeah, I think, obviously, like, I really believe in patients and the community, and I think it's a very powerful place, like when you can come together with other people who understand. Obviously, like I'm so grateful that it exists today when it wasn't as strong years before.
The power of community, and even if it's like you said, just throwing out one question out there on Facebook or Instagram, any social platform, and just seeing the responses that you get back, whether it's or you post it on Reddit, wherever it is, getting that sense of community. And it takes vulnerability. It takes vulnerability to share, whether you're a caregiver or someone with lived experience or someone who's living with something. There's that sense of vulnerability of, okay, I need to ask because I don't know the answers. And so if someone is struggling with that, do you have some insights to share, or maybe some advice to share if they're struggling with that vulnerability?
It's so interesting you mention that, because I've reflected a few times on other friends that I've known who have serious conditions, and some of them don't ask questions in community, in like these groups. And I think we all just do have different personalities, right? For some people, just following along in the conversation is really valuable. Being able to search the conversation, um, I think like in vulnerability more generally, like I guess having kids with disabilities, there's like I think it's an invitation to be vulnerable, to share in their vulnerability. Like that's how I look at it. Like they don't have a choice to be in a wheelchair, um, but like I have a choice to be vulnerable with them in that experience together, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think the whole experience of having a disability or a health issue is that it is that invitation, and it's not, no one, I think we can talk about these concepts so ideally, but nobody wants these things. But when you lean into them, it can be sometimes incredibly rich, life giving. Like I think it's the upside down nature of life, like you have less choice maybe, and suddenly your life is better, which doesn't make sense. Or you need people, and maybe some people let you down, because that's often what happens when you actually need people. Yet other people come up from out of nowhere, and you just have this gratefulness that you couldn't know existed because you've never needed people before. So don't know how it relates to online community, but
Well, I love that though. It's like that invitation to be vulnerable. I like what you said is, for your son, like he didn't choose to be born and live with cerebral palsy. And so it's that invitation to say, hey, as a caregiver, I don't know the answers. I don't know a fraction of the answers. So I need help, or, hey, I'm here to help because I have this lived experience. And we have a friend, my wife and I have a friend, and she lives with, she was on the podcast. Her name's Jody. She lives with colitis. And whenever, she sends a text and say, hey, something's going on, and I just need your opinion on this. And I have Crohn's, not colitis, but it's very similar. It's GI related, and so we can talk about things, or we can give each other advice on things, or say like, no, I think you should stop messaging me and go to the hospital. Like I think that's where you're at right now. But because I think we get in our own heads of like, well, is it that bad? Is it, am I making this up because maybe a friend told me or a doctor told me that it's not that bad? And so we kind of just maybe sink down and go, well, maybe I can get through this. So that's the power of community, whether it's app-based, through phone, through whatever. There's so much power in it.
And I think the reality is it's so rare to probably get that from your medical professional. And I love doctors and specialists. Like I just have so much respect for so many people. But I think the way the system is, you just can't always get that access to go with those sort of vulnerable questions. And they're just under their own time pressures, and all their workload and all the things they have to manage. If you can find a professional you can go to with those vulnerable questions, it's like hitting the jackpot. You're like, what? You care about these like questions that are like seem so insignificant? I've had one doctor like that, and every time I tell him, he's like, no, this is not okay. And I'm like, what? Oh, we just, no one has the answer, so no one's interested. But he's like, no, that doesn't matter. It's impacting quality of life. Like,
Yeah. Well, I had a doctor on recently, and she gave such great advice. She said, whenever you're going to go see your doctor, you might be having a good day that day. So if your doctor asks you how it's going, tell them what's been happening. Don't just say, oh, today's a good day, because they don't want to hear that. They want to hear what's been going on. And so I just love that. It's don't sugarcoat it. Don't like put roses and daisies all over something if it shouldn't. If something's going on, just it comes down to that, how to advocate for yourself, just how to communicate that out. And so, you're, again, when we were in our pre-call, you'd said that, hey, you've got endless stories of how the Turnto app has helped people. Do you have a story that comes to mind or something that you'd be able to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, we are super grateful because we get lots of messages. I think just to like preface it, we're an early stage tech product in that we're like always we're changing, we're updating it, which is really amazing as well because our team some of our team have built and been part of amazing apps that people use every day. And so, the key is to listen to people. And so, we feel like we're super early, we're changing, and some of it's, people are coming back, and there's a group of people that really love what we're building. I remember there's many different stories that we hear. I remember really early on someone messaging us, we'd shared some research and some other information about a particular treatment called treadmill training. I mean, it is what it says. It's not like that profound, but in cerebral palsy, it's actually a really interesting treatment, and you do it a particular way. And she was mentioning that her hospital team weren't approving this particular treatment. They said that there's no evidence, and so because of the app, she actually found evidence and she shared it with her team, and the actual hospital team have gone on to start doing this treatment for kids in her local area. So she just needed a little bit of evidence to like push something she was trying to do, and we gave her that evidence. I mean, we didn't, it came up, the evidence exists, but she didn't have access to it. So that was a really interesting early experience for us. Like, oh, okay, there's something that helped someone advocate at a time. We've also had lots of stories around people just making different decisions. So 66% of people who use the app have actually started a new treatment or changed a treatment that they're doing. And that, huge number.
Wow.
And it's just because they're getting access to all the ideas, and they're able to make different decisions, like whether that's lifestyle things, whether that's, equipment can be really impactful when you have a disability. In the long COVID space and the MECFS community, which we've just launched, there are very few treatments that are, it's very early days. I mean, it shouldn't be. MECFS has been around for so long, but there just isn't a lot of options. So, we've gotten lots of stories from people of like finding new things, new information about things to talk to their doctors about, whether that and a whole bunch of lifestyle things people have started trying because they're seeing what other people are doing, and not just other people. Like it's one of the things that I value, and I think patients value in the app. We call it context and perspective. So I think I get really frustrated by like vanilla health information, like it's just this one answer. It doesn't really satisfy you. And I think patients want the nuance. You want to know, hey, there's pros and cons. There's research for and against. Like you want to actually, like we can handle that. Like, okay, there's not a clear answer, but maybe I'm in the one camp that it works, or I'm in the camp it doesn't work, or I'm in the camp in the middle, or so that's something that we don't just share crowd information. It's crowd with research, with expert. There's like a mixture of perspectives on like, because how do you know if something is like, the next snake oil or the next best cutting edge thing? Like it's a really tricky question. And sometimes like leaders in the field have got really interesting stories. We had like some really interesting stories like a while back when we were doing a lot of treatment reviews early on in the app, and the second most popular treatment people were writing about is a treatment that's had no research done on it. It's very early. It's very safe. It's an intensive kind of physical therapy experience. And I met the world leader like in that space. She's like the world leader in early intervention. And she said, I'm going to now study this treatment because everyone is writing all these things about it. So that was really, really exciting to be like, wow, like, let's not wait 5 years for you to take notice of something that the crowd is, if hundreds of people are saying something, we should be curious, right, about what's happening here.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm like, okay, so when is Crohn's going to be on the app? Or when is arthritis?
Let's put it in. We'll put it
let's
in.
put it in just for me. It's I love it. No, but I can imagine a small team, but I can imagine people listening to this are going, okay, when is my condition going to be in there? And so I would say just patience. But I think if your condition isn't in the app and somebody is struggling to put all that information together, Where does somebody go start aside from just going to Reddit and Google? Like, is that where you go?
That's where you go, Tim. I mean, you've done it yourself. It's about like, where is your community hanging out? Like, I think if you're really early on in the diagnosis, you don't always know. And there's probably a few places, maybe it's Facebook groups, maybe, long COVID is really, and MECFS is really on Twitter X. Like, it's, where is your community sitting? I think that's the first question. And then it is like, maybe you want to sign up for some Google Scholar alerts. I would probably recommend, signing up to a ChatGPT account, getting access to the latest AI. If you can actually access it for free. But I just think it's the greatest hope we have for, like, I don't know, there's this story, I mean, it's an analogy, I'm sure you've heard it, about four blindfolded people are touching an elephant all in different spots. So someone's holding the trunk and they're describing what they're seeing, and someone's, feeling the fluffy tail. I mean, is it fluffy at the end of a tail? I don't know. But nobody knows that it's an elephant. And I think when you have a complex health condition, you don't know it's an elephant, particularly at the beginning. And actually, I think for me, I was reflecting on my story with my feeling with my son. I think it took me years to understand the elephant, to even know, like, the dimensions of what it was, what we were facing, what exists, where are, like, the cutting edge treatments going to come from, what's quality of life now. So I think AI tools, I personally think they give us a hope to find the shape of the elephant much quicker, because it can connect data points. And so it's like, you're feeling these different things, you're experiencing this. It's like, you may not get a perfect answer, but I think you'll get like a 70, 80% picture that before you had to go to 10 different professionals. Or if you're lucky to find that, if you can find a world leader in, like I have before, and I've like cornered them in a foyer in like a conference, and you ask them like off the bat, like, hey, what are you most excited about? And you just want to get a little like recording device, because it won't be anything you've read. It'll be like, oh, we're thinking about these things. These are like, and it's so interesting. And it's just, that information is so hard to get to and gate kept and all these things, because they can't even talk about it because they don't have the evidence always. But if you're living with a condition, if you're living with a life limiting illness, like, you need to know what that is, right?
Oh, I love it. I've gone to Google, and, you Google some symptoms and it's like, okay, you've got, nothing to you're going to, have a serious problem in like 3 hours. So, it's, you still have to weigh all those inputs and how they relate to you. And, on this show, I've said, like I say, we're not doctors here. We're advocates. We've got lived experience. We're sharing what may have worked for us, and it might not work for you. But I think it's important just to even have some understanding of what's going on with your condition, just to even bring that to your doctor. And as you said almost half an hour ago, is it's okay to make mistakes. And I think, that's that validation just in this episode, is it's okay. It's okay to not know everything and to make a mistake.
That's right. That's right. I mean, what is it? And that's it. I guess it's, you can call curiosity, like, that's all you want from a medical provider in those moments. If you're feeling, if you've got something you're struggling with, a major symptom, a new diagnosis, an old diagnosis, like, it's curiosity. You're like, what can you do? What's going on? Like, we just want that from other people. And I think it's that if there's no answers, then it can be an end of that curiosity, which can be really difficult. But like, I guess I have this one specialist I work with, and he's like a neurologist and a geneticist, and he is the most curious doctor I've ever worked with, and he's the most knowledgeable. Like, and it's like, we get on a call, and we, at the end of every call, we end with like, okay, what else is happening? And we just have a chat, like, what else? What else? What are you thinking? And it's like, it's incredible. It's an incredible privilege that we get to talk to him. But most of the time, like, you can't do that. You just ask questions and you can feel really stupid. And I can say to him, hey, I've got this stupid question. Like, should I be worried about this? And it's like, and sometimes he often says, actually, yeah, that's quality of life. Let's stop here and think what we can do. So yeah.
That's
Keep going.
brilliant. Yeah, it is. It's keep going. And it's a good reminder, even at the beginning when you said, hey, you had to find multiple different doctors and go to multiple different doctors to get that treatment that so desperately needed. And, as we look to wrap up, I like to ask everyone this question is, invisible conditions exists with a purpose to end the stigma. And there's so much stigma, there's so much fear, there's so much shame wrapped around invisible conditions or invisible disabilities or all disabilities. How are we going to end this stigma? What is one thing we can do to end the stigma?
Small question, Tim.
It's a small question to end an episode with. So, or we could go on for another 20 minutes just answering this. No, it's a small, it's big, but I know there's, everyone has a unique perspective, and I'd love to get yours.
It's really interesting. Like, I was reflecting recently with our app, we've gone into long COVID and ME/CFS, and I had that condition like many years ago. And I said to a friend one night, like recently, I said, I'm just remembering this time I had, and it feels like I was an alien. Like, I was living in this world, but I was like an alien because I was having this experience in my body where, like, I'd talk to somebody, I'd look normal, I'd sound normal, and then I'd go lie in the dark for 10 hours. I was a high functioning person who had a lot of purpose because, some people have this opinion, which I think is pretty rubbish, that, oh, you mustn't have had purpose in your life. It's like, no, I was working for the Red Cross, I was traveling the world, I had this great job and I loved it and I wanted to impact and all these things. So I think, like I said to my friend, like, meeting all these people again in long COVID and ME/CFS, a lot of my meetings, people have been lying in bed. And it's like, I am like, if I hadn't had that lived experience, like, it's just so hard to relate. Like, I'm like, I feel what they're feeling because I've been through it. And so, like, I don't know if this is at all helpful, but my best friend did come on the journey with me. That's the hope, is like, I would have looked completely normal to her because I did have an invisible condition that at the time didn't have the science. We now know there's lots of biomarkers. We have so much evidence for these autoimmune diseases. But at the time we didn't. And she just believed me and was empathetic. And so maybe she is like the hope, that she could see me looking normal and just have empathy and come on a journey with me. So, I think I don't know if that's at all insightful, but we do have opportunities to go on journeys with people. And if we don't have the evidence that things are existing or real or we understand them, when you love someone, you can go on those journeys with them. And you can also see the impact of it on their life, which is very hard to refute. So yeah, I don't know how to end it, but I know that my friend did come on that journey with me when it seemed madness, what I was going through. And she never once didn't like just go on it with me and accept it and help me and see anything she could do. And no one's perfect, but she just, yeah. She's the hope.
She's the hope. Okay, so we got to get her contact information. No, just joking. It's like she's gonna have a little startup of her own, just being the hope buddy. And
yeah,
but
she's good at it.
That's awesome. The words that are sticking out to me is believe, empathy, curiosity, and how we can end the stigma. I love that you went there because often it's someone who is speaks from it from a first person perspective. But I love your perspective of, hey, if you're on the opposite side, if you're listening to somebody's story, or maybe you're a partner and somebody's going through something, or your child is, or your friend is, just believe that something's going on. Have empathy and compassion and get curious. There's conditions. I put together a list of a small list of 250 plus conditions up on my website, and with definitions and online communities and online accommodations. I haven't heard of most of them. So if somebody comes to you and says, hey, this is what I'm going through, or this is what they think the diagnosis is, get curious. Don't dismiss it. Believe someone. That's amazing.
Exactly. If you don't understand, I mean, that's everything, isn't it? If we don't understand someone else's story, like, if you can't begin understanding, then you just don't have that ability. But I think most people do. So
yeah, I think most people, when invited into a story, will get curious. And so it's a matter of, even as you brought up too, is getting vulnerable, being vulnerable. And that allows someone to be invited into the story, and not saying, "Hey, get curious," as much as going to a conference of thousands of renowned scientists, and you putting your hand up in that conference and saying, "Excuse me." I love that. I wish I was a fly on the wall in that conference.
Yeah,
that's amazing, Jess. I appreciate you coming on. Sharing a bit about your story as a mom and a caregiver to a son, and with CP, and building this amazing product. If someone wants to learn more, where would they go?
Yeah, so if you are in one of our current conditions or upcoming conditions, you can go to our website, Turnto.ai. We're also on the App Store, so you can just search Turnto and it will come up, Health Breakthroughs. And yeah, we are going to go to many conditions quickly over the next sort of 3, 6 to 9, 12 months. So more is coming quickly because we know that it's resonating and people are coming back and finding value. So yeah, they can do that, or they can reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with anybody. If there's any advocates in the audience who are passionate about us coming to their condition, reach out. We can that's how we've grown conditions, is advocates are leading the way. So we just really lean into lived experience.
Amazing. And I'll put all those links in the show notes and when we share it out on social as well. And I've met a few people on your team now, and just amazing. I love what you're doing, and I love the advocacy work and wanting to change this archaic health system that we have. I'm in Canada, you're on the other side of the world, but we share something in common, which is, the health condition or the health journey is challenging. And so, yeah. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Tim. It's been great.
Yeah, and for those who are listening, tell me what you think about this episode. Please head to invisiblecondition.com, the website. You can leave feedback there. But what really helps this show is if you head to your podcast platform, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, and subscribe, leave a rating, leave a comment there, a review. But also subscribe to the newsletter. That's how you're going to know not just about podcast episodes, but also written interviews and new articles and just new things going on with Invisible Condition. And one last thing, this show is it's made possible by people who donate to keep this show and keep this project going. So if you have the means, please head to the website and consider donating there. So with that, I hope everyone has an amazing day, and we'll talk to you soon.